Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Navs Effect podcast. I'm your host, Naveen Ganglani. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for giving our podcast another opportunity to have some of your time. And if you are a new listener, thanks for giving us a shot. We hope that you'll be listening for the long term. So we are getting closer and closer to the final four of the UAAP Season 88 Men's Basketball Tournament. The race is heating up, but given our recent results this weekend, we're starting to get a picture of how things may look like. So I can't wait to tackle all of that, including to discuss some latest developments with certain teams, what we've seen on the court, and in the case of one team, what might be in store for them as we get to the off season. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Navs Effect podcast. First, a major thank you and congratulations to Cooper's Coffee House, one of the friends of this podcast. Cooper's just launched officially their new BGC branch, and I can't wait to go check it out. I would have gone to the launch if we didn't have UAAP action on Saturday, but I'm sure given how their other branches look, this one is going to be just as spectacular. Again, my top three drinks so far at Cooper's Coffee House for those who are wondering, and for those who are wondering what they might want to order the first time they go there, the brown butter latte is to die for. The iced matcha is absolutely awesome. And recently, their new brown butter cold brew, fantastic as well. If you're looking for a snack, the grilled chicken pesto sandwich, my go to, especially when I need a post workout meal, shall we say, packed with protein. Okay, so let's first discuss the UE Red Warriors. It's been a little bit like the season from hell for UE. They had their head coach suspended for 4 games after a post game tirade against the officials, which included a few F bombs. um, Non related, but one of my favorite press conferences ever, just for entertainment purposes. It felt like a sports movie while it was happening. Now, granted, obviously warranted some punishment from the league, but a lot of fans online had fun with it as well. Then, of course, Welo Lingo Lingo was suspended 3 games after what was deemed an unsafe play that led to the injury of Kian Baklan. That's been talked about and kinda judged publicly for so many times now that I'm not gonna get into that again. But we know that that impacted their team because Wello is one of the go-to guys for the Red Warriors. Then they lost John Abate, who wound up missing the last how many games? The last 3 games of the season due to back spasms and a fractured nose, which unfortunately he sustained from an elbow by his teammate Precious Momaway in their loss to Ateneo, a game that they were up by double digits and then squandered late in the fourth period. One of the few games where UE has squandered the lead. And now they find themselves 0 and 13 on the precipice of the wrong side of UAAP basketball history. So in the Final Four era, which started in 1993 of the UAAP, here are the teams that have gone winless. In 1994, the NU Bulldogs went 0 and 12. And for those wondering why it's 0-12, not 0-14, that's because that was the year that Adamson was not part of the UAAP men's basketball tournament. And then 6 years later, in 2000, Adamson went 0-14. Then the year after 2001, Adamson also went 0-14. So they went winless for 2 seasons. Speaking of going winless for a few seasons, the UP Fighting Maroons in 2007 went 0-14. In 2010, they went 0-14 again. And then in 2013, they went 0-14. That's 3 straight times. And then in season 84, 2022, our first UAP season after the pandemic, the UE Red Warriors went 0-14. So overall, a total of 7 teams, or yes, 7 different teams have gone winless. And UE is one loss away. Their final game is against FEU from going 0-14 and becoming the 8th team to join that list. 8 different team, but in terms of schools, there are only four schools who have gone winless in the UAAP men's basketball tournament since the Final Four era. Now, I'm pretty certain that UE is going to approach this final game against FEU almost like it's their championship match. 113 is not that much better than 014, but at least you still get one win, right? Compared to history remembering you as one of the teams that went winless. And FEU, who picked up a rather impressive victory against De La Salle University on Sunday, they'll be playing for their final four hopes because they're one loss away from potentially being eliminated in the final four race, given, of course, there's still other variables there, how other teams like LaSalle, Ateneo, and UST perform, but FEU is really at the stage now where they can't lose any game, and that's why their win today was very important. So FEU is also gonna have a lot on the line in this game, but UE is also gonna have a lot on the line in this game too. So I'm expecting there to be some fireworks in terms of competition and action in that contest. So what's next for UE? That's the question after the 014 season, potentially, or 113. Will Precious Momoe come back as the FSA next season? If he wants to stay in the UAAP, UE is really his only choice. So, will he come back for another season? Well, I guess that remains to be seen. But like I said, if he wants to keep playing in the UAP, it has to be with UE. But there are a few guys who might not be back. Now, John Abate, we know for sure isn't coming back because he has exhausted his playing years. And what's next for him is the pro level. By the way, we did a recent exclusive interview with John on this podcast, so go check that out in our archives. But there are other guys like Despi, like Nico Muling Tapang, like Turdi Malaga, and a few others in UE's batch of recruits that might not return. I have this on the record. I spoke to sports agent Anthony Brodett of Phenom Sports Management today, and Brody, credit to him, he said these exact words. You can quote me, it's on the record. And trust me when I say not a lot of managers are willing to do that, but Brody did. And his words are this, and I hope you guys are listening. If UE doesn't make changes, he's pulling out his players. And how serious is that? Well, Nico Muling Tapang already has a destination if he decides to leave. According to Brody, that's the CSB Blazers in the NCAA. So, what's Brody's message or what does he want out there? First, he wants to make it clear he's not blaming the coaching staff. He doesn't have anything against Chris Gavina. Now, there have been rumors in the past about maybe a friendly rivalry between Phenom and Phil Am Nation, which Gavina coached for in the past. But we should note Gavina isn't exclusively with Phil Am Nation, and Brody and Gavina, I believe, have worked things out. And Brody again emphasized that he's not blaming the coaching staff. In fact, he says that he feels bad for the coaching staff because to him, it's almost like they have to coach with one arm behind their back from a hyperbole standpoint. He also made it clear that he doesn't have any issue with Tanduay, the backers of the UE basketball team. In fact, he also says that he feels bad for them because they can't always operate or make decisions how they want to. Now, again, this is coming from Brody. For him, he says that he wants to see UE management, meaning the school itself, take serious actions to winning and changing the fortunes of the program. He didn't go much into detail about who from the school or what decisions exactly, but he did say that he would like to see the school allow people who want to help the team more and not have authority over decision making. To be fair, we haven't heard UE's side from this yet, but this is coming from Brody's side. And the important point here, like I mentioned earlier, is that he has it, or rather, he wants it on the record again, that if there are no changes this offseason from UE, he's pulling out his players, he will send them somewhere else. He will send Despi to another UAAP school. He will send Muling Tapang to likely an NCAA school, the one we mentioned, CSB. And he would send his up and coming recruits to other UAAP schools. So, What UE decides to do with that, we shall find out. Will Chris Gavina be back after this season? We don't know that for a fact. Which would be unfortunate for UE fans. And if you guys go online, you'll notice that UE fans are some of the most passionate fans in the UAAP. They deserve better. This feels like a wheel of misfortune for the Red Warriors. Ideally, if you're a rebuilding program, you start here, then you keep climbing up, you keep climbing up, you keep climbing up, right? So season 84, UE goes winless. It's a season where Jack Santiago is supposed to have his first go with the Red Warriors, but instead he gets suspended for the year. He returns season 85 and he actually does a decent job. I believe they won 5 games. He gets a young standout in Ray Remogat, who surprises many, a rookie. Gani Stevens starts playing really well. Then he loses Gani and also Kyle Paranada. Then the year after they won 4 games, they lose Ray Remogat too. And then last year, season 97, they start off really hot. They're 5-2, then they go up to 6-2 at one point after they won against NU in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. And then they go on this really unfortunate losing streak that cost the university their first Final Four appearance since 2009. So, Jack Santiago is out the door after that collapse. In comes Chris Gavina. And Gavina's mission, he made it clear, is he wants to change the culture of UE Red Warriors basketball. And I am sure that Coach Chris had the purest intentions, likewise for his coaching staff, but it looks like the culture hasn't changed much. And instead, if you compare to how last season went, it's taken a turn for the worse. Now, that's not Coach Chris's fault. I'm sure that if he had the chance to maybe walk back some of his post game comments to avoid suspension, he would. And I'm not saying that he's not faultless for that, but it wouldn't be right to blame what has been I know it's brutal to say, but a bit of a failure of a campaign for UE this year just on him. Because he's done his job. And if you believe some people who want to talk about the program and the team, he's done his job despite being limited by resources and decision makers. Now, what will happen? We shall find out. But it's fair to say that as of this moment, UE, the men's basketball team, is once again in a state of flux and uncertainty. And recent history shows us, particularly with UST, that to get out of that status as a cellar dweller, you need the right resources, you need the right backing, you need the right people to lead you, and you need the right support from the right people to allow those new backers to come in and do their thing. So we shall find out what will happen the rest of the way with the UE Red Warriors. First, I'm sure they're going to fight hard as hell to try and win that game against FEU to end the season with some pride, we should say. Okay, now the team that beat UE, the NU Bulldogs, they are in the complete opposite stage. They're 11-2. Whether or not they win their final game against UST, they will end with their best ever performance as a team in the UAAP Final Four era. They finished with 10-4 records in season 76, which was the year that I believe Bobby Ray Parks won MVP, but NU was eliminated as the 1 seed in the Final Four. And they also went 10-4 in UAP season 86 2 years ago, where they were eliminated by DLSU in the Final Four. This to me is the best NU team ever, at least in the elimination round. And the record shows that. Will they be the best NU team ever? Well, the 2014 squad that won the championship with Cobontin, Rosario, Aroga, Alolino, and company, well, of course, they would have something to say about that. But more than just the brilliance of this season alone, you have to give NU a lot of credit for turning this program into a consistent winning program. Now, granted, unlike teams such as a UE or an Adamson, they at least have some resources to maybe not exactly go toe to toe with the powerhouse resources like UP, like a LaSalle and the UAAP, but at the least some resources to put their names in the ring, right? To recruit the right players. I mean, that's how they recruited Tebel Garcia and Vince Reyes from the Adamson High School program. But a lot of their main guys are guys they developed and they patiently worked with. Manansala, Figueroa, Palacielo, Steve Nash Enriquez, Paul Francisco, Omar John. These are guys who got incrementally, marginally better year after year. And now that they're in their final seasons and their basketball maturity has balanced out with their physical abilities, you're seeing the best of the Bulldogs. So far, the only team that has beaten them are the UP Fighting Maroons. And they're doing it with superb defense. They allow the least amount of points in the paint in the UAAP. They do a good job protecting that area. They share the ball. They're the best three-point shooting team in the UAAP, which is a big win for them considering the last few seasons they rank in the lower class of the UAAP in three-point shooting. Now, granted, they don't take a lot of outside shots compared to the rest of the league. They like doing their damage in the paint. They like attacking, but they're patient and intelligent with their approach. And rarely will you find an NU team this season that will beat themselves. They will make you have to beat them. And it's hard to criticize a team that can play consistently that well like NU has. Since 2022, when Coach Jeff Napa took over the head coach reins of the Bulldogs, they've consistently been good. Now, the season 84 squad missed the final four, yes, but that was the first year of their rebuild. And in season 85, they made it to the final four. Season 86, they started off really strong, tailed off at the bit of the elimination round, and then secured the third seed, and then they lost to LaSalle. Season 87, they lost their starting point guard, Kian Baklaan. And then they lost their FSA in the first 5 minutes of their opening game, Odi Asana. And still, they secured wins against UP and LaSalle, the only team to do so, the finalists from season 87. And they won against both those squads despite having no FSA. And they should have been a title contender last year, too, if they had an FSA. Now, this year, all the guys came back better. Omar John came back, as he said in his own words, more calm without so much anger issues. And they're just playing correct basketball. Mature, correct, unselfish basketball. And it's really impressive how they didn't tail off in this elimination round compared to the last few elimination rounds when they start strong and end a little sputtering. Again, like I said, they have only lost to UP, but they've beaten every other team. And recently, they've been beating teams in late game situations by giving the ball to Jake Figueroa and letting him lead them. This is the best we've seen NU since the championship team. This is the best shot they have to win a championship. They've worked towards where they are now for years. This has been years in the making. Development, practices, off-season tournaments, out of town training camps. They even went to China, they've gone to Korea, they've gone to different places. Consistency under the same head coach, consistency under the same program principles, and trusting their own guys. I think that's key here. The guys they have now were the guys they invested on years ago and kept developing, and now those guys, Manansala, Figueroa, and company, are paying it back to the people behind that program. To some degree, it almost feels like an old school UAP way of winning, right? Back in the day, we would have teams that would recruit guys in their early years. They'd go through some hard times, and then when they get to the latter stages of their careers, that's when the hard work and the heartbreaking moments and all those countless of hours in the gym finally pay off. So you just have to enjoy what NU is doing right now. And they're one of the models in terms of how you can win in the UAAP by doing things the right way and without needing super deep resources to retool on the fly all the time. Again, there will be some tough moments there along the way, but when things pay off, like they are for NU now, I'm sure it feels good for the members of that program and for the members of that community. All they gotta do now is not choke this away. They have a twice to beat advantage for the finals. They gotta make it, NU. Now it's your time to shine. So, another team that I want to talk about is LaSalle. But before we talk about LaSalle, I do want to talk about another partner of this podcast, Daily Fantasy. So, if you haven't yet, download the Daily Fantasy app on your phone or register for an account online. And if you're an NBA fan, by playing Daily Fantasy, you have the opportunity to win tickets to Los Angeles for the All Star weekend at the Intuit Dome. How do you do that? You just gotta join the NBA coin games 50, 100, above if you want to. Multiple teams means multiple entries, and multiple entries mean multiple chances to win the raffle to go to LA for the All Star weekend. Make sure to click the link in the description box to join, and you can use my referral code as well. So, to LaSalle, I know it's starting to sound lazy to just say it's the free throws, which is why they're losing. But now, to be fair, I agree. You can't just blame their losses on the free throws. There are other aspects there too. Like, for example, when you're in a game against FEU and you're not yet secure of a Final Four spot, you can't go down by 14 in the first half and then play catch up, because then your margin for error against a team that's motivated to make the Final Four themselves, it becomes much slimmer. Nevertheless, it doesn't help your cause, or rather, it makes it much more difficult when you keep shooting yourself in the foot by missing free throws. Let's take a look at LaSalle's 5 losses this season. So today, we're recording this on a Sunday, November 16. They lose by 1 to the Tamaraws, 84-83. And by the way, a few episodes ago, I said that if there was one team FEU could play spoiler for in the second round, it would most likely be LaSalle, because FEU matches up well against Green Archers. But here, FEU wins 84-83. DLSU goes 10 out of 22 from the foul line, which is, well, you guys know how to do math. Against NU, their last loss, 75-67, they lost by 8. They went 20 out of 36 from the foul line. 18 misses. 16 misses, rather. In their previous defeat against NU, 82-78, they lost by 4. They were 23 out of 33. 10 misses and a 4-point loss. In their loss against Ateneo, 81-74, they lost by 7, a game they did trail by 30 plus. They went 25 of 45 from the free throw line. Lost by 7, missed 20 free throws. In their first round loss against UST, they lost by 9, 93-84. They missed 10 free throws out of 21. They went 11 out of 21. So that, not so much like the others, but like I said, you guys know math and you can make the connections. And there are even some games this season where they did escape with close wins, but the game shouldn't have been that close because they missed a bunch of free throws. I should also say this FU game, it was the first time this season where I think you can say straight up Jacob Cortez played a role in LaSalle losing. And granted, I say that knowing that Jacob has saved LaSalle many times this season, and he's done more good than harm for DLSU in his first year as a Green Archer. But, and also, you can't blame this loss solely on Jacob, but he did play a role in it happening. First, shot 2 out of 14 from the field. 10 points on 14 shots is not effective. Yes, he did have 6 assists, which is good, but he did have 3 turnovers. And 2 of those turnovers came late in the fourth quarter. That pass against the zone that led to a Neil Owen steal, which was a careless pass. I believe Jet Manuel was the analyst, called it nonchalant. And then the traveling violation, where I think at that point LaSalle was either tied or they were up by 1, but that was costly. And here's where it really hurt for DLSU. So, Luis Pablo, who I felt played impressive except for the free throws, but overall played a good floor game, scores with a minute 32 seconds left. LaSalle goes up by 1, 83-82. Kirby Moncopa misses a 3-point shot. Mike Phillips gets a rebound. So 116 left. You're up by 1. You make one shot, becomes a 3-point game. You make a 3-point shot, it becomes a 2 possession game, 4-point lead. Jacob Cortez misses a 2-point jump shot, 101 left. Mike Phillips grabs an offensive rebound. Jacob Cortez misses another shot, 51 seconds left. Mike Phillips grabs another offensive rebound, and then EJ Goliana misses a shot. After that, Conate gets a rebound. FEU pushes the ball. Moncopa scores. FEU goes up by 184-83. After that, 14 seconds left. Jacob Cortez misses another 2-point shot. It was blocked by Moncopa with 14 seconds left. Moncopa gets the rebound, but he turns the ball over. And then Makalalag ends up missing an open 3-point shot, which was a relatively good look. FEU ends up winning the game. Again, Jacob's not going to be perfect every game, but at least for this contest, his inefficiency and some of the late misses and the turnovers played a role in DLSU's defeat. And as one of the leaders of this team, it will be up to him now to bounce back and play well starting on Wednesday when DLSU faces another desperate team to stay alive in Adamson. Because if Adamson loses that game, they're out of the Final Four chase. Earl Abadam played well, 18 points and 7 of 16 shooting. Makalalag also played well, 14 points and 6 of 11 shooting. Phillips with 14 points and 19 boards. Luis Pablo 11 points and 5 of 7 shooting. So you got solid performances out of Makalalag, Abadam, and Pablo. And the three of them really stepped up in the fourth quarter. They made some big time plays in the fourth quarter in different stretches. And when you get contributions from those guys like that, you have to find a way to win the game. Otherwise, you put yourself in a precautious situation, and that's what LaSalle finds itself in now as we enter the climax of the elimination round. Now, the Ateneo Blue Eagles, they lost to the UST Growling Tigers on Saturday. And after the contest, this is what Coach Tab Baldwin had to say. I'm concerned about all of them and more about shot selection. If we took better shots, our percentages would be higher. Ateneo is now shooting 34.36% from the field, which before the Adamson UP game, which could have probably changed things, that ranked last in the UAAP. Where else Ateneo ranked last? 47.4 allowed rebounds per game. Now, Tab does have some reason to be concerned about the shot selection because late in that game against UST, you could see that Ateneo was not getting some inefficient shots. Was not getting efficient shots. And with that, I mean a lot of contested mid-range jumpers, a lot of pull-ups. What they lack is someone who can get to the paint, someone who can get to the elbow of the paint in particular, draw two defenders for kick-out opportunities. Theoretically, that could be a good role for Dom Escobar, but the ball doesn't exactly find his hands that much when it comes to late game situations. And Coach Tab also said one of the reasons why Jared's field goal percentage isn't so effective is because if you're the guy who has to take late clock situations, most of the time they're pull ups, your field goal percentage really won't be so high. And that has been one of the areas that has limited Ateneo this season. The quality of shots they get late in the game. Now they're still 5-3 in the lineup with Divine Adili in the lineup, and UST you have to give them props because they played an impressive brand of basketball. Now Ateneo also kind of enters semi-survival mode. They have a game on Wednesday against UP, and this is a significant game for UP too because UP needs this win to secure a twice to beat advantage. And if Ateneo loses that game, they'll end up having 7 losses, which would put them on the brink of elimination. And remember, their final game of the season, the postponed game on the 26th of November, is against LaSalle, and that game might have a lot of stakes. But before we get to that kind of environment where Ateneo is playing for something, they have to take care of business. They have games against UP, Adamson, and DLSU. And a win against UP on Wednesday would go a long way for them, but given how the first round matchup between both teams played out, not a guarantee. One of the reasons why Ateneo was performing well in the clutch to start the season was because of Bahay's shooting. He was making some really tough contested jumpers. That game against FEU, that game against USC at the Blue Eagle Gym. But his shoulder injury has somewhat limited him. And it's also a bit of regression to the mean because you won't consistently just make tough shot after tough shot. So other guys for Ateneo will need to take more of a scoring responsibility. You want to see more of Espina being aggressive, more of Escobar. And while Lodi did put up some good, or rather, good scoring numbers because he did finish with 14 points in this game. It took him 21 shots to get there. Zero assists, three boards. Where's the offense gonna come from for Ateneo? Sean Tuano, 8 points, 4 of 9 shooting. You also need more from him. And if you don't, Ateneo is gonna find itself in dangerous territory. UST, just an impressive win. I think it was one of those games where they took care of business. And you saw in their last two games against UE and then now against Ateneo, at least it looks like they're starting to find a bit of their mojo again. Even the game against UP, which they lost, I thought that they played impressively the way they fought back against UP in that second half. So if you're a UST fan, at least there's some encouraging signs with the way the team is playing right now. And that's what you want to see from a Final Four caliber squad. A team that handles its business. A team that's supposed to beat the team it's supposed to beat. If you also look at the standings, and we're gonna get into it more later, there's starting to be a framework of a potential UP UST 2-3 matchup again there, which would have a lot of fireworks. So the other teams I didn't mention, FEU again, solid win. Moncopa with another standout performance. He made some big plays late. January Pasaol, one of the best tough shot makers in the UAAP. Joric Bautista, they were calling him Buckets Bautista, and for good reason. He scored like 8 points straight in one stretch in the third period when LaSalle was rallying. It's gonna be really hard for FE to make the Final Four this year because of their slow start. But again, they're ending the season on a good note. And they have a game against UE, which, like I said, UE will make it tough for them. But if FEU plays to their potential, FEU should win that. And then they have a game against UST, which would be very important for both squads. So they're not out of the picture yet. They do need some luck. They will need at least LaSalle to lose. They will need LaSalle to lose at least two out of their next three games. Ateneo to lose at least one so that they can tie them in the loss column. But given how difficult LaSalle's remaining schedule is, I'm not saying that it's going to be impossible. FEU also has to take care of business, but at least they're in the fight. And even if they don't make the Final Four this year, you have to just applaud what they've done this season. But knowing Coach Sean and those boys, they're gonna want to make the Final Four. They're gonna play for the Final Four. They're thinking that they should make it there. And that's why you just have to enjoy what we're seeing from FU this season. They're a team punching above their weight class because they believe they belong in the same weight class as these other guys. And again, by next year, these boys are gonna be lethal. Lethal. Adamson, they've been in so many close games this year. And they're so dependent on their outside shots going in. They've taken the most amount of 3-point shots in the UAB this season. And that three ball allows them to stay in games, but also sometimes it shoots them out of late game situations. That loss against NU was a heartbreaker for them. This loss against UP, they could get off to a very slow start, and they fight back. They cut it down to one. Then Raylan Torres comes up clutch. Just a backbreaker for Adamson. They're not out of it yet, but they do have games against LaSalle and Ateneo remaining, and they have to go undefeated the rest of the way. So I'm sure they're gonna put up a fight. I'm sure they're not gonna go down without giving those squads hell. And if there's one thing to be really excited about with Adamson, it's the development of Ray Allen Torres this season. Stellar performance against UP. He finished with 23 points and 7 of 15 shooting, 3 out of 8 from downtown, 6 out of 8 from the free throw line. Unfortunately, he has only one season of eligibility left due to age, if I'm not mistaken. But next year, he should be even better. He has one of the most lethal outside shots in the UAP. He has a pretty good penetration drive game, which Adamson could really use because sometimes it feels like they take a lot of outside shots, which granted is part of the system. But if they just had a guy who can penetrate more and draw multiple defenders, it could come in really handy. If Torres can improve his defense and improve his playmaking, he has the roadmap to be a quality pro in the future and maybe Adamson's go-to guy by next season. UP doing UP things, taking care of business. 9 wins in their last 10 games. The only loss was against LaSalle, which went down to the wire. I think UP and NU have elevated themselves past the rest of the league right now in terms of quality of play and consistency of play. And I think it's good for UP that they're winning a lot of these close late game situations because they're gonna find themselves in close late game situations come the final four and finals. And for them to win the twice to beat after how granted they have to beat Ateneo first on Wednesday to get the twice to beat. But for them to potentially get that, given how the season started, is a testament to the ability of their coaching staff to adjust on the fly and put in the right pieces and find the way to get the best out of their players on both sides of the court. Now, a little bit concerning is that Gani left the game with a sore ankle, it seems like, after close to the end of the fourth period. And they really need him. He's become very important. His ability to get multiple possessions in the offensive glass. He's finishing with both hands around the rim. His activity in the paint. And Naruka, defensively, like I said, he's not as good as a QMB or Malik, but offensively, when he gets it going, he can be unstoppable at times. Some of his dunks in transition too, like the poster against Franceman today, insane, insane. And remember, UP has a bit of an upper hand against NU. So if those two teams end up facing each other in the finals, well, UP will not at all be intimidated by the Bulldogs. But of course, we're getting ahead of ourselves because there's still a Final Four to play and an elimination round to finish. If I had to do a power poll, not just on the standings, but based on who's playing the best basketball right now in the league, I would say UP and NU are tied at 1 and 2. At 3, I would say UST. At 4, I would say FEU. At 5, I would say LaSalle. At 6, Ateneo. At 7, Adamson. And 8, far 8, is UE. Again, that just goes back to how well FEU has done since that slow start. Maybe next year, if they don't get off to a slow start, they could be competing for twice to beat. Who knows, right? So now let's look at the actual standings and games remaining. NU at 11-2. The remaining game is against UST, which I think will be quite competitive and quite fun. Remember, NU already secured a twice to beat, but they're trying to sustain or rather attain that number one overall seed, and with a win, they can get there. UP is 9 and 3. The remaining games are Ateneo and DLSU. Wednesday, Ateneo, DLSU on Saturday. Now, if UP wins that game, like I said, they will get a twice beat advantage, which makes Saturday's contest a little more interesting because at that point, UP will not be playing for a twice to beat. They will be playing for the one seed. We know in the UAAP, the one and the two seeds both get twice to beat advantages. So will we see UP maybe play in the context of dictating who they want their matchup in the final four to be? Because if they go for the one seed, they could, based on how the standings look now, it could still be UST, LaSalle, Ateneo, FEU, or Adamson. But depending on how Wednesday's games go, particularly that DLSU Adamson game, when UP gets to that Saturday game against DLSU, they could determine if they want to face LaSalle or UST in the Final Four. Now, this is based on the assumption, which is far from being confirmed, that LaSalle would beat Adamson, because in that case, Adamson would be eliminated. So we'll see how it plays out. First, UP has to play on Wednesday, but I want to see if on Saturday. Now, given what they've done in the past, I do think UP will still go all out and play their main guys, even if it's a non-bearing game. But I am interested to see if they maneuver to some degree to determine who they want to face in the Final Four. UST is 7-5. The remaining games are against NU and FEU. The NU game and FEU game, both actually, UST needs those to secure this Final Four seed. They're tied in the loss column with LaSalle with 5 losses each. DLSU is 6-5. The remaining games are against Adamson, UP, and Ateneo. Ateneo is 5-6. The remaining games are UP, Adamson, DLSU. FEU is 5-7. The remaining games are UE and UST. Adamson is 5-7. The remaining games are DLSU and Ateneo. UE is 0-13. The remaining game is FEU. So we'll see how Wednesday goes because that's gonna give us a better idea of what the framework of the Final Four is gonna be like. Now, if Adamson finds a way to win, which they're capable of doing so, and Ateneo somehow pulls off this win too, then things get a little extra interesting. It's like putting some putting A1 sauce in addition to gravy to your steak at night. What a season. What a fun season. It's hard to predict anything for certain. Unpredictability is what's predictable right now. Nevertheless, at least we're enjoying it and we're having fun. Thanks for joining the podcast. Much love to our friends over at Cooper's Coffee House and Daily Fantasy. And we'll see you guys this week. More UAP basketball action to come. Peace.